Good evening. I'd like to introduce to you a woman who is a lot like us. All of us, before we come face to face with our Creator, are like this woman. And when you listen to her story, you discover your own story. She received something from God that we ourselves learn to receive from God. I want to introduce to you the woman at the well. If you have your Bibles with you this evening, I'd ask you to turn to John chapter 4, beginning at verse 1 through 26. And I would ask you if you would please stand with me. Jesus knew the Pharisees and heard that he was baptizing and making more disciples than John. Though Jesus himself did not baptize them, his disciples did. So he left Judea and he returned to Galilee. He had to go through Samaria on the way. Eventually, he came to the Samaritan village of Sychar, near the field that Jacob gave to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired from the long walk, sat wearily beside the well about noontime. Soon a Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Please give me a drink." He was alone at the time because his disciples had gone into the village to buy some food. The woman was surprised, for Jews refused to have anything to do with Samaritans. She said to Jesus, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. Why are you asking me for a drink?" And Jesus replied, "If only you knew the gift God has for you and who you are speaking to, you would ask me, and I would give you living water. But, sir, you don't have a rope or a bucket," she said, "and this well is very deep. Where would you get this living water? And besides, do you think you're greater than our ancestor Jacob, who gave us this water? How can you offer better water than he and his sons and his animals enjoyed?" And Jesus replied, "Anyone who drinks this water will soon become thirsty again. But those who drink the water I give will never be thirsty again. It becomes a fresh, bubbling spring within them, giving them eternal life." "Please, sir," the woman said, "give me this water. Then I'll never be thirsty again, and I won't have to come here to get water." "Go and get your husband," Jesus told her. "I don't have a husband," the woman replied. Jesus said, "You're right. You don't have a husband. For you have had 5 husbands, and you aren't even married to the man you're living with now. You certainly spoke the truth." "Sir," this woman said, "you must be a prophet. So tell me, why is it that you Jews insist that Jerusalem is the only place to worship, while we Samaritans claim it is here at Mount Gerizim, where our ancestors worshipped?" And Jesus replied, "Believe me, dear woman, the time is coming when it will no longer matter whether you worship the Father on the mountain or in Jerusalem. You Samaritans know very little about the one you worship, while we Jews know all about him, for salvation comes through the Jews. But the time is coming, indeed it's here now, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. The Father is looking for those who will worship him that way. For God is spirit, so those who worship him must worship in spirit and in truth." The woman said, "I know the Messiah is coming, the one who is called Christ. When he comes, he will explain everything to us." And then Jesus told her, "I am the Messiah." You may be seated. She didn't know that she was in need of Christ. She didn't know she was dying of thirst. She didn't realize that her life was parched, wilted, and dry. She didn't realize that she was what she was hungering for, or that she was longing for an intimate partner, Jesus, the one who created her. All she knew was an unending sense of dissatisfaction, an unsettledness, and an uneasiness. She had 5 husbands, each one different from the others, each one offering her a different medicine to soothe her itch, to ease her anxiety, but none of them worked out. One maybe had an adulterous affair. Another one complained. Still another one left because of the constant bickering. But though the excuses were all different, what was the same was her loneliness, her awful loneliness. She came to the well alone in the heat of the day when it was so hot. She knew that no one else would be there and that she wouldn't have to deal with other people, and she wouldn't have to endure the stares and the gossip. She came to draw water from Jacob's well, which was deep. What she found was the spring of living water, who touched the depths of her heart that no one else saw. In fact, it was a part so deep that she herself didn't know. The Lord brought her to that place where he meets us in our deepest, most tender parts of our heart, the place that is most wounded. John 7, verse 7 and 8. The Samaritan woman came to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Please give me a drink." And he was alone at the time because the disciples had gone into the village to buy food. This woman was a Samaritan, a member of the hated mixed race, known to be living in sin, and was in a public place. No Jewish man would talk to a woman under such circumstances. Jesus crossed all the barriers with her past, even when he was tired. He invited her to minister to him. And in her woundedness, she saw him just like any other Jew, just another person to reject her. We do the same thing. We look at our past sins thinking that we are disqualified, that we have nothing to offer the Lord. Well, let's look at Jesus' response in John 4, verse 10. When Jesus replied, "If you only knew the gift that God has for you and who you are speaking to, you would ask me, and I would give you living water." Because if you really knew, you would have asked me. When your hearts see God, who do they really see? Do you see him like this woman did? Someone scary or distant, unavailable or unconcerned? When you've been rejected, you see him as rejecting. When you've been judged harshly, you see him as a harsh judge. And when you're wounded by anger, you see him as someone who is angry. We don't come to God with our deepest hurts to see him wrongly. Jesus was inviting this woman to see him for who he really is. He was offering an invitation to let go of the inferior thirst quenchers. The woman was confused about two kinds of water, maybe because no one had ever talked to her about her spiritual hunger and thirst. There are spiritual functions that parallel with physical functions. As our bodies hunger and thirst, so do our souls hunger and thirst. We would never deprive our bodies of food and water, so why should we deprive our souls? Water is necessary to life, to all life. And next to the air we breathe, it is the most important thing in our lives. In John 7, 37 and 38, it says, on the last day, the climax of the festival, Jesus stood and shouted to the crowds, "Anyone who is thirsty, come to me. Anyone who believes in me may come and drink. For the scriptures declare, rivers of living water will flow from his heart." In Isaiah 55:1, "Is anyone thirsty? Come and drink. Even if you have no money, come, take your choice of wine or milk. It's all free." We're so committed to quenching our thirst in ways that bring us only brief and temporary satisfaction. We run from one thing to another, trying countless combinations to quench the thirst that only the living water can satisfy. The Samaritan woman says to the Lord that I have my traditions, my culture, my history, even Jacob's well to draw from. What do you have? You don't even have anything to draw water from. What can you give me? She was holding on to what she had. what she knew, and what she thought would satisfy her. But Jesus invited her to drink from that which truly satisfies. Jesus was telling this woman, just like he says to you and me, the old ways don't work. You have to keep coming back. You've tried over and over again to find relief in relationships. But she was also tied to family traditions, which had the potential to keep her from the very thing she longed for. We try harder and harder, doing it over and over, but instead of relief, we get more and more dry and more thirsty. How many times have you tried to get relief from the same things that no longer work? Even good things can keep us from the living water that fully satisfies. Jesus invited the woman to see him for who he really is. And he invites us to let go of our ways, to find satisfaction, to give up our attempts to draw water. He got the woman's attention, and she invited him to give the better water, the one that truly satisfies. He pursues us, seeking us out, calling to us until we're ready to open up that area in our lives. He will come, but only at the invitation into the areas of our brokenness. In John chapter 4, verses 15 and 16, it says, "Please, sir," the woman said, "give me this water. Then I'll never be thirsty again, and I won't have to come to get water." "Go and get your husband," Jesus told her. Husband? Oh no, husband? I've had 5, and they have never worked out. The most sensitive place in her life, where she experienced the most failure and shame. What will you do when the Holy Spirit reveals a wounded place in your heart? Has this ever happened to you? You're talking about deep issues, and then it quickly becomes superficial. We make it small talk. We'll talk about the weather. Our small talk becomes the elephant in the room, if you understand what I mean. We keep it superficial because it's comfortable. When you talk about bringing the living water into your brokenness, that can get really personal. In John chapter 4, verse 17, when he says, "You don't have a husband," the woman replied, Jesus said, "You're right. I don't have a husband." The whole conversation, the great need of Christ to come through Samaria, was all designed to bring her to this point. She didn't back away. How many of us do? When we face something too painful, do we revert back to the old ways? When the Spirit is clearly prompting us to look at it examine it, and bring it to Him. When we confess, when we agree with Jesus that we are hopelessly defeated in a certain area, we're allowing Christ to enter into that place of brokenness. This woman was in a painful and uncomfortable place. She tried to change the subject. When God catches us in the blinding light of His power and presence, we often try to squirm and we try to avoid the subject. Church, hear me. This is critical. It's not the brokenness, it's not the darkness that's the problem. It's the absence of the light of the world. I think that's worthy of repeating. It's not the darkness that's the problem. It's the absence of the light of the world. Amen. We don't like being there, but our shepherd's relentless. Once you invite him to address this area, he's not content until you begin to look like him, until you begin to reflect his light in your life. Well, Jesus steers the conversation back where it needs to be. And in John chapter 4, verses 21 through 24, Jesus replied, "Believe me, dear woman, the time is coming when it will no longer matter whether you worship the Father on this mountain or in Jerusalem. You Samaritans know very little about the one you worship, while we Jews know all about him, for salvation comes through the Jews. But the time is coming, indeed it's here now, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. The Father is looking for those who will worship him that way." For God is spirit, so those who worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. God is not worshiped in a particular place. He's worshiped in spirit and in truth. If you want to go to the holy place, come to me, he says. The real place you worship is in me, not in Samaria or in Jerusalem or in a church building, but in Jesus. You must come to Jesus. He says, "You come to me, I give you my spirit, and then you are drawn into the worship of the Father." Don't worry about the place. Jesus is the place you worship God from. Jesus offers this woman a relationship of such satisfaction and security. It would surpass everything she's ever known. Jesus satisfies deeper than anything we could ever want or need. Do you see how giving God is? The Father seeking Jesus, the Son offering, the Spirit quenching our thirst. A God who is described as a fountain for the thirsty. Could he be any more giving in his offering of living water? As the worship team returns, and so it only remains for us to come to him. This is where we are at this point. To confess our brokenness. To confess that we look for life in everything but him. Are you spiritually dry? Some of you may be as dry as dust. And some of you may have never come to Christ for the living water. Some have come in the past, but it's been a long time between drinks. We are naturally thirsty. Wherever you are right now, and whatever your struggle, Jesus says to you in John 4:13 and 14, anyone who drinks this water will soon become thirsty again. But those who drink the water I give will never thirst again. It becomes a fresh, bubbling spring within them, giving them eternal life. Church, the altar is open, and the fountain is flowing for all who are thirsty. I invite you to come.